a curriculum committee meeting. First, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And I'm going to take a motion to enter into an open session of the curriculum committee. Mr. Johnson, and I'll take a second. Ms. Grinnell, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Core, would you like to begin?
Yes, okay. So we're very fortunate to have Deborah Keogh. Deborah is our district supervisor of music K-12 with us this evening to talk about a change in the way we provide music education and the way we would organize our performing groups. Deb has been the leader in the Suburban Council with regard to authoring the white paper that was on behalf of the Suburban Council music directors, and also preparing the presentation that you will see tonight. So essentially, per CDC guidance and per the most recent research showing the impact of vocal performance, instrumental performance, both woodwinds and brass, we have some documented evidence here that we believe we can operate safely with our students at a distance of 6 feet with masking and with bell covers on the aforesaid instruments. So we would be one of several schools who have already gone forward with this in this direction. And we feel that this is just another important step. We went forward with higher risk sports. We also believe that this is a very important step forward for our students who participate in music within the district to provide them with a quality experience. So Deb, without any further ado, I will turn the meeting over to you. And I know you have screen sharing, correct?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Core. Thank you for having me here tonight. I want to thank the Board of Education for the opportunity to speak with you. I very much appreciate it. I'm going to bring up my slide presentation. Okay, so I want to provide an update on music and what we're doing right now and what we hope to do with your approval going on from tonight. So now that we have approved high-risk athletics, both in Albany County and specifically in North Colony, this question, what does this mean for music, has been something I've been hearing almost every day. And most especially certainly from parents, certainly from community members, but most importantly, I've been hearing it from students. They're saying, hey, what about me? Essentially, they're saying, what about me? And so I'm here today to talk to you about what we do have, but what we don't, more importantly. So certainly we have music in North Colony. Absolutely we do. And we've done some wonderful things in all of our classrooms. But like you know from saying the Pledge of Allegiance over Zoom, there's a lot of audio delay and it's really very difficult to teach. Very difficult to teach music over a virtual format. So we have been working our best, but certainly it's been a struggle. But besides just the technological restrictions from being mostly online or partly online through our education, we have these other COVID restrictions that have had a significant negative impact, specifically on our kids. First one is that not all of our students are able to participate in some music classes because of the distancing. Because New York State guidelines had recommended 12 feet to sing or play wind instruments, we have classes where they don't all fit. So for instance, I'll give you an example. Our 7th grade chorus has 104 students who are in person, and more of them, there's about 140 total, but 104 of them are in person. We split them into 2 groups every other day, which is fine, but 52 students at 12 feet apart don't even fit in our La Folla cafeteria in Shaker High School. The largest space we can use, we can't put them all in there singing, so we have to have some of the students singing And then the rest of them seated in the other portion of the cafeteria at 6 feet, kind of more, in a what's normal right now, distance to each other, and they're not able to sing. So they signed up for chorus, and they're sitting there kind of catching up on homework or playing on their phone. Another restriction that's been impacting us is because of our K-6 classrooms being all 6 feet apart. That means we're not allowed to sing in those classrooms because the 12 feet distancing is impossible to do in those rooms with 15 students in them. And for a kindergartner never to sing, it's practically telling them, don't be who you are. And the worst one for me is the isolation. Our students, especially at the high school level, who are most aware of how they feel in certain ways, tell us how isolating it is to be singing or playing an instrument 12 feet from everyone else. So imagine that 7th grade chorus again. So you're 12 years old, you're standing there in La Folla cafeteria at high school, and the next closest kid is 12 feet away, and the next one 24 and 36. The only person you can hear is yourself singing. So you really do feel like you're singing to all of your peers. That's a horrible feeling for a 12-year-old student. And this is why, in part, our students feel so incredibly isolated and they're so quiet because they're miserable in their classes. There are, of course, COVID restrictions that just impact music, period, and all of the performing arts, especially with regard to audiences. So there's not much we can do about that, and that's kind of okay. On my end, it's about the kids. Really, it's about the kids. The audiences, we can try to do things, but it's really about making the experience right for our students. So of course, even though the limits on gatherings seem to change every week, right now I understand it to be about 33% capacity, max of 100 people. Certainly that's not going to fill our high school auditorium. And our high school auditorium right now looks like a storage room for every band instrument that you would think we own in the world. And of course, there are opportunities that our students don't have because they are large events, like NYSSMA Area All-State, for instance, a large in-person music festival, or our large musicals. Even though the junior high this year put together a virtual musical opportunity, only 20 students signed up. The entire experience was over Zoom, and it was great that Mr. Vasilakis and all of our wonderful teachers put this together for students. But usually we have 100 students in our junior high musical, and we turn some away even at that. So certainly we can't do things the way we want to or used to do. So what do we know? A year ago, things were scary for all of us. And we heard lots of terrible stories about choruses, shoulder to shoulder, and people getting sick, singing in a room for 2 hours. And certainly we were doing lots of things like that too. And those didn't turn out to be, the best ideas, like talking and face-to-face, all these things we used to do. So in the absence of any real idea of what to do, because no one knew, there was no research into COVID and music, the New York State Department of Health recommended 12 feet distance to sing or play wind instruments. And I don't fault them for not knowing what to do. They made their best guess at some kind of recommendation so schools could move forward. What I do find notable is that in that same guidance, July of 2020, they listed 12 feet to sing or play instruments under recommended best practices. So it was never listed under their category of mandatory activities regarding social distancing and face coverings, but it was listed under their recommended best practice. And in lieu of any other information, of course, the schools followed it. Since then, we know so much more. So for the last 10 months, there has been a research study going on at the University of Colorado and then replicated at the University of Maryland. And it has found science-based answers to determine how does all of this work? What does it mean to have aerosols, the air particles that have moisture that come out with our breath when we speak, cough, sneeze, sing, blow in a trumpet? How does this all work with regards to music? And the first dose of the research came out within 2 days of the state health department guidance last summer. So of course they couldn't consider either on those two ends, but it did happen to come out about the same time. This slide was one that did come out right away in July of last year, and it was measuring aerosol particles from singing. And this was part of what they were able to realize showed a huge positive impact of wearing a mask when singing. We know it's true when speaking, We know it's true in our daily interactions. People sneeze and cough and yell with a mask on, and it's still considered safe at 6 feet. But there wasn't information about singing, and was it safe to the same degree that speaking, coughing, and yelling and all those things we do with a mask. It turns out that a well-fitted mask absorbs 92% of the particles that exit the mouth when singing. So you can see in this graph the very high spikes, the relatively high spikes in terms of measuring aerosol when a soprano is singing versus the tiny blip when that same soprano is singing with a mask over her mouth. By now, over the last 10 months, they've figured out every instrument, and the oboe happened to be one of the worst offenders in a way. It uses a lot of air pressure. I actually think that's related to this because it's the highest one, and the most back pressure comes from an oboe. It feels like you're blowing up a balloon when you feel all of that pressure and you're like turning red. An oboe feels like that to play. And it had a lot of aerosols measured at first, but then when you put a bell cover on the end of the oboe, it was reduced by 96%. And a bell cover is essentially, you can think of it as a mask. And when you look at an instrument, they all kind of flare out at the end. And that ending of the instrument is called the bell on every instrument, every wind instrument. And so if you cover that with fabric, and we did a deep dive into the research to find out what kind of fabric, and we've been doing this in bands in North Colony all year, and in most of the Suburban Council schools, we've been using bell covers. They absorb or cover so much of those aerosols just the same way that a mask does for someone who speaks or sings. Since it's been 10 months, they've now researched all of the instruments that we use in our schools. So let me show you quickly how these all compare. In the brass instruments, the trombone without a bell cover, you can see those gray bumps there. Those columns are representative of the measurement of aerosols. And again, when we cover the end of the trombone, the bell of the trombone with a cover, essentially a mask, it's greatly reduced. And those are those orange columns. The trumpet actually has a lot of pressure too. So we as music teachers kind of geeked out with the science to say this has to be connected. The air pressure involved in the oboe, the air pressure involved in the trumpet, those are the two higher ones with regard to aerosols. But you can see when you put a bell cover on the end of the trumpet, that is roughly in line with the other instruments, the trombone, for instance. I have the French horn listed here. Fun fact, the French horn is actually not French. You know, if you're a professional horn player, you just call it a horn. But if you unwound it, it's about the length of a school bus. All that tubing, if you straightened it all out, and by the time you put a bell cover on the end of it, there's really nothing coming out of the other end of that horn. They've also gone through all the woodwind instruments. You can see the clarinet here with its measurement of aerosols and the clarinet with a bell cover. The saxophone, which is a very easy instrument to blow into, no pressure in there, which is why we think it originally measured so low. And the virtually not much of a difference because there never was much coming out the other end of the saxophone. The oboe, like I showed you, that higher pressure instrument, and the 96% reduction by just covering up the end. What I find fascinating about each of these examples too, all of the woodwind instruments have holes in them. So if I'm playing a clarinet, there are holes in the clarinet. So it seemed logical to us music teachers last summer that if I just covered the end of the clarinet, well, then the aerosols would come out everywhere else. And it turned out that's not true. Surprisingly, it's really very directional. It comes out at the end, and that's why that bell cover on the end of the oboe, even though the rest of the oboe has holes, and you would think it could come out another way, it's actually really directed at the end, and it makes a tremendous difference to cover the end of the instrument. The flute has almost no aerosols to begin with, and so covering the end of it makes not much of a difference again, but it's such an easy blowing instrument. There's no pressure on it. So what seemed to be maybe the flute is really dangerous, it turns out it actually is not at all. They also, in this 10-month research study, went through every instance of using the voice. So speaking on a stage, you can picture a very prominent actor who has a huge stage presence and just has a booming voice. There's two kinds of, different ways of speaking on a stage, and the impact that it makes by covering that speaker on the stage with a mask. The measurement of the soprano, they knew last summer, but they measured some more examples of it. And this is like, professional operatic shatter the wine glass soprano. And you can see the incredible difference that wearing a mask makes when you sing with the mask. And last in the vocal category was a baritone, so a deeper male voice, which didn't have as many aerosols, something to do with, vibration and frequency, I would imagine. But it makes a big difference in the aerosols. These two examples that the study provided just give some basic information that show it as a matter of contrast. So even if you don't understand the science of it, I don't think you need to. You see it goes from 0.7 to 0.32, 64% reduction, and it puts the saxophone with a bell cover just above background levels. So if you think there are just aerosol particles that float around, all of us are wearing masks all day in our workplaces or in the stores, but somehow, somewhere, a little portion might get out somewhere. There are background levels of aerosol, and this is essentially where they end up, is the instruments end up in that same category. And that oboe, the one that I said was the worst offender, bringing it from 4.0 down all the way to 0.5 by just covering the bottom of the instrument, brings it right in line with everything else, the other instruments. This slide I found fascinating. Again, I'm not the researcher. I just pulled all of this data out of the study, but it measured the airflow in the room. So there was a fascinating article in the New York Times with a simulator a week or two ago that measured, how aerosols eventually will settle in a room. You breathe out warm air, your body's 98 or so degrees, and warm air rises. So you can see on the left, the clarinet player is playing without anything covering the clarinet. Over the course of the whole rehearsal time in that large space, the warm air rises, and you can see it's like my daughter called it a tsunami wave of aerosols that'll eventually settle down and be a risk to the other players in the room. But by covering the end of the clarinet in the right picture over the same duration of time, the aerosols barely go anywhere, certainly don't rise and cause a tsunami, and they don't come anywhere near the player who's 6 feet next to them. At the end of 10 months of research, this is the final recommendations that the study put forward. And I want to tell you that we're doing everything. We are masking everything. Bell covers we've been doing all year. We have shorter rehearsal times. Our schedules did that, and we've been conscious of it as teachers as well. We've increased the ventilation as districts. We've put in filters. We've done everything. However, we're not doing this. We're actually doubling it. We are not providing 6 feet of distance between students to play instruments or sing. We're doubled at 12 feet, and that was because the State Department of Health made it up. And I don't fault them. Coming up with some kind of guidance was their job, and they did so well. But now we know something different. And so after all this time, this is the research that came out. Since then, the CDC released guidance on February 12th for schools. And New York State school leaders and teachers and parents probably were eagerly waiting. I couldn't wait to hear, what were they going to say? And it sounded all the same. 6 feet, masks, been there, done that. However, this was new. Inside of there was a mitigation toolkit, and there was specific guidance, and there was specific guidance for music. This had never existed. The CDC has never said anything about music in schools until February 12th, and this is what they released. Masks, of course, for students and staff, of course. 6 feet apart to play an instrument or sing, a wind instrument. So this CDC guidance, they had the benefit now of knowing the research that was out there. And again, last summer we didn't. Nobody knew anything yet, but they did now. They knew the research, and the CDC recommended 6 feet to play. They also said if inside a mask to sing, I would suggest, when we bring students outside to learn, we leave their masks on. Leave the mask on inside or out, but mask to sing and bell cover to play. So essentially 6 feet apart for everyone, mask the singer, put a bell cover on the instrument, mask the singer on the instrument. Because of these recommendations from the CDC and because of all the science that exists right now, the Suburban Council music directors recommend the same. We recommend 6 feet distance while singing or playing instruments, masks at all time, to speak or to sing, bell covers on the wind instruments. And we also would go further and suggest that we could tie this to the positivity rate and Department of Health recommendations for athletics. Music was never prohibited in New York State. It was just given some recommended best practice on how to deal with it in the classroom. So given that now we have the science, we know what's mandated, not mandated, and we know what the CDC says, still, we're in good times right now. We're under the 4%. We're in the situation where we've allowed students to wrestle, to play basketball, to be 6 inches apart from each other, at least momentarily for these activities. And we're willing to say just 6 feet apart. But if the COVID rates got worse in the area, we would certainly look at that again. Here's the best part, though. This is what makes me happy, because this is what it would give to our students if we were able to do this. We could, of course, have full participation in music classes. So 7th grade chorus, you're 12, 13 years old and you signed up because you like to sing. You actually get to sing in chorus class. Kindergarten through 6th grade students could sing. We haven't done it once. And it's something that if we walked into a class, I know Mrs. Greco at Blue Creek has gone into her music class and said, guess what? We have something exciting to do today. And the kids jump up for joy and say, are we singing? And she's like, no, something else. We're doing so. I swear, you'll enjoy it. We're dancing again. But being able to sing would be just who they are as little people. We can decrease the isolation for students, which is huge. These kids are really struggling. They're really in a place of despair. I just watched our 11-12 chorus this afternoon, and as good as a rehearsal is, you just see their faces are hanging low, and they're not themselves, and it's heartbreaking to watch. We could improve that in a very noticeable way. This is fun. We could do some fun things. So how much fun has it been in school lately? But we can make something fun. We can do a senior night, which our athletic teams are able to do right now. Our sports teams are able to recognize our seniors. They didn't have a concert at the spring of junior year. They don't have a concert this fall. They're not going to get a concert in the end of their senior year, but we could do not a concert, but a really cool event where we just get them all together. And I'm not calling it a concert because that wind ensemble, they've never even been in the same room together yet. We had the North kids in the high school, the South kids in the high school, remote kids on both cohorts. They've never once played together, not once, but put them on the stage, 6 feet they would fit. And then bring in the senior, if we're allowed, bring in the senior parents to sit in the auditorium seats. And it's sort of an open rehearsal, and we'll play our best versions of the song at the end of the night. And we'll do those recognitions that we do for seniors. Stand up, be applauded, recognized, wear your graduation cord on the stage, and do those recognitions that we believe are so important for kids. Combined nights for a 9-10. I don't want to leave the 9th and 10th graders out of such an opportunity, so I'd do something with them as well, likely with no parents there because there's too many of them, but I think it would be awesome. We could have a pep band at our high school home football games. They're so excited. The kids are itching to play pep band music and have fun in the stands and just enjoy what they do in band. We could have a marching band night for families. Our high school marching band director, Sam Baldwin, calls it Park and Park. You stand in the parking lot and the parents pull in with their cars. It's almost like a drive-in marching band concert or something, and you play for them. It's exciting, it's fun. The kids can have that opportunity as seniors or just any grade to have that culmination at the end of the year. Shaker Select could sing live at graduation, or wherever graduation is, if it's outdoors, indoors, the Times Union Center, anywhere. If we're 6 feet apart, they can hear each other in a large space, and then we could pull off singing together, which would be fantastic for these kids. And almost every kid in Shaker Select is a senior right now. Same thing for Wind Ensemble. They could play the national anthem live at graduation. That would really be awesome to have. They're a great part of our program, and it would be wonderful to recognize those seniors as well. we could do something for our younger students too. We've yet to have band. So you're a fifth grader, you signed up for band last year, you played your trumpet through the fall. They just started band middle of the year, and then March shuts down and that's it. So they really don't even know what it means. And it feels like they've been waiting and waiting. And I guess I signed up to do lessons, but they missed that opportunity. It would be so exciting to say, guess what, guys, next week, the Latham Ridge 5th and 6th grade band or 5th grade band or whatever we can fit, we're getting together in an awesome rehearsal and have that experience. We can do some things for our junior high as well. They're a little bit stuck with their schedule and their opportunities, but just getting them 6 feet together, they could hear each other. Those students in chorus, not only could they not feel isolated, but they could hear their parts, so they could learn better from each other, and then be an awesome opportunity besides a few special rehearsals to get kids together. All of this, of course, is dependent on being 6 feet. I haven't done any of these this year, as much as I'd love to do these things, and I can't do any of these at 12 feet distancing. Here's the other benefits to students, and these are worth 10 times what the last slide are. The students that have been getting through this year have really struggled in terms of their mental health, in terms of their ability to form their identity, to learn from each other. This is not the time to be an adolescent right now. It's so much easier to go through COVID-19 as an adult who, as much as all of us might struggle with 100 things and very, very difficult circumstances, we're not 12, we're not 15, we're not going through some of these really difficult times. And being able to impact their mental health in very positive ways would have such an impact on our students. It's very, very frightening to me to read that third bullet and to recognize from this article and the study that was quoted in the New York Times in February that a quarter of young adults in this country have seriously considered suicide in the last year. It's not surprising to me to read that because I see the faces of our high school students every day, and I know what some of them are going through. I hear them talk to me about the last time they saw anybody, the last time they saw any of their friends, and knowing how much friendships and connections mean to all young adults. This is incredibly, incredibly challenging for them, and being able to make an impact on that would be tremendous. I put this quote on here because it's what someone said to me after describing all of the challenges, all of the hard experiences that they've had over the last year. They literally said, I can get through everything else if I can just sing. So in the last few weeks, Niskayuna, Bethlehem, Burn Hills, Boston Lakes, Scotia, Glenville, and Guilderland have approved these recommendations from the Suburban Council Music Directors so far, and there's 4 other districts in our region who are in progress, like we are, in terms of presenting to the board or presenting to the district or the physicians, or process-wise how they're moving on. But we didn't approve sports because we cared about basketball statistics. We approved sports because we recognized it to be reasonably safe, and we care about kids. So the mental health of our kids is as important as their physical health, and I hope that we can push forward with this change. I do want to just point out finally that if we are able to make this change after tonight, we can improve opportunities for just shy of 4,000 North Colony students as early as tomorrow. So I do want to say thank you to the Board of Education, to Mr. Kaur, and to everyone for the opportunity to review this information, to consider this, and to seek opportunities for our music students in North Colony.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Deb.
thank you, Deb. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Keogh? Mrs. Nardolillo?
I do have one question on the shared instruments like desks. I mean, as we do with desks, we make sure everything is sanitized before the next group of students come in. Will that be also, I assume that will also be done for any shared instruments?
Right. We thought that through actually pretty early on, recognizing that some of the practices we used to do with brass instruments where a student would have their own mouthpiece, but they might share the instrument, and that's gone. All of the wind instruments are not shared. Not a single wind instrument is shared district-wide. The only instruments that are shared, there are a couple, and there are like a bass drum, a couple of large percussion instruments. So we have practices where either the student has their own sticks, their own mallets that they touch, like their drumsticks, or there are practices where, like you go to the doctor's office and they have the bucket for the clean pens and the dirty pens. So it's the clean mallets and the dirty mallets. The only other instruments that are shared are only a couple of the large string basses or cellos, and the teachers take the lead on cleaning them. And that's only between, with breaks in between, where perhaps a 7th grade bass player and an 8th grade bass player rarely might use the same instrument, and they're aware that they do, but they're cleaned by Miss Burke, say, for instance, which I'm not
What
even
about
sure
like
we
music stands and sheet music and things like that?
We don't share any sheet music. Every student has their own, and music stands. They don't touch. They don't do anything to just drop their stuff on it, but they do get sprayed down. We were actually Mr. Williams and I were just looking at today the residue on the chairs because they're fogged. They come through, the custodians go through it every day, and they're all cleaned every day. The music teachers at the elementary school with the rotating lesson groups wipe everything down in between.
Thank you. It's a great presentation, really. And I've seen it 2 or 3 times.
Any other comments? Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Go ahead, Mr. Chavo.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just wanted to say thank you to Deb, because she definitely put in an incredible amount of effort to put this presentation together. And it is, as she said, it is so incredibly important to so many students and teachers. What we've been going through, if you can, have any hope, then that's what we need. And I feel that, Deb, that's what you presented tonight. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I want to be clear about what we're actually proposing in terms of changes, right? So we're talking about changing the distance. Singing has been going on, right? It's just at a distance of 12 feet, which makes it very difficult. So we're trying to, we're talking about reducing that distance. We're now going to allow wind instruments to be played.
No, they have been.
They have been played.
They have been also at a distance of 12 feet.
So we're condensing that distance. We've been using the bell covers and appropriate masks?
Yep. All year we've been masked, the singers. We've been using bell covers.
The only change we're talking about is that distance.
Correct.
And that's what facilitates the ability to sing in an elementary school level, because now you'll be able to fit the whole class at that distance. Okay.
Right.
And you mentioned 3 or 4 districts that have already been doing this. Do you know how long they've been doing it?
The 5 districts have just approved it in the last 2 weeks. There are districts in New York State that have done it all year. So I know there's a district in Montgomery County. I just actually don't know the name of it. And I know there's others in Western New York. I know there's some in Northern New York and in Long Island. And even in September, I saw them on, pictures on Twitter where they're singing 6 feet apart. So there certainly have been.
There is precedent for it, and if this were actually a problem, we would have probably seen it already.
100%. It's been happening all year in certain districts. Yeah.
You also mentioned tying it to the positivity rate. Do we have a proposed number for that, or is that just sort of a hypothetical at this point?
It's sort of a hypothetical on my end, and I only meant it in terms of the tying it to the high risk athletics, and it's sort of a way of saying if that made this more palatable or more comfortable to consider, then by all means we're happy to tie it in the same way that being under 4% was what allowed Albany County Department of Health over the average, the 10-day average, was what allowed Albany County Department of Health to give the approval for districts, then boards of education to then give individual approval. So if we were over a 10-day average of 4%, I would turn to Mr. Core and say, how would you like to proceed? And if we needed to pull back, we'd be happy to do so.
Okay.
And as a point of reference, Schenectady County and Saratoga County also were at 4%. They just went below that benchmark before Albany County did, but Albany County followed a few days later.
And then my last question is, we're kind of making the comparison to high-risk athletics, or just athletics in general here. That's very much a voluntary situation. Are we going to offer parents, and I say parents, probably not the students, this would be a parental decision, the opportunity to opt out if they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason? Is that a pedagogically appropriate thing to do?
Oh yeah, we've already talked with the teachers, and I said that if we had any students whose parent or the student themselves, voiced they're not sure they're comfortable with it, absolutely, we'd be completely fine with pushing them at 12 feet and leaving them at 12 feet distance. And so far, I've asked many of my teachers, have you said anything, and what are you hearing? And the kids are begging for the.
Well, I'm sure the kids are. It's the parents who have to be the bearers of bad news, or who might have the elderly grandparent or the immunocompromised family member or something like that, and need to do what's in the best interest of their family. And I just want to make sure that we're not that we're giving them the opportunity to do what's right for their children and their family.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, I'm trying to say, I am a parent in the district of a student in chorus and band. So she plays horn, she sings in the schools, and she's in person as a student, a hybrid student. So she's right there. So I say all of this not just as the district music supervisor, but as a parent of a child who I know would go from playing and singing at 12 feet to playing and singing at 6 feet. And I have not no concern whatsoever because of everything I've read, because in reading the science, the basic assumption came from the notion that, singing must be more dangerous and playing an instrument must be more dangerous. And I'm not the scientist. I don't know if it is, but it certainly, maybe it was. But maybe also was all of the talking and yelling and all of the coughing and everything that just we do when we were shoulder to shoulder in a room for 12, for 60 minutes or more. So I'm not convinced by what I've read in the science that it is more dangerous. And so given that the mitigation of being 6 feet, the mitigation of a mask, and the mitigation of a bell cover provides all of those precautions, to me, knowing that essentially it showed that the mitigated instrument is no more than the background level of aerosol. As a parent and as a music teacher and as the supervisor, I feel incredibly confident that there is no increased risk in anything we'd be doing.
Have we, and this question is probably more for Mr. Core, have we run this by our medical, we have a district medical advisor.
Yes, we have.
And we have her approval for this?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, I could share that with the board, but we did send her the plan. We did send her Deb's recommendation. We did send her the Suburban Council. Her response was that I have no objections whatsoever, and I see this as consistent with what other districts are attempting to do.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? After Mr. Stein did his presentation on athletics, I made a comment about the pandemic taking its a toll on our students. And I think we all know that music is good for mental health. And sharing music is great for mental health. And I think we have a great music program in North Colony. We all know this. And there are a lot of students who will be affected very positively by your recommendation. I know I emailed you this morning about numbers. We have 2,200 of our students across the district in performing groups. We have over 800 fourth and fifth graders doing lessons, orchestra and band lessons. We have a tremendous program. This is going to have a huge impact, a great positive impact. So I certainly support your recommendation. I have confidence in the science, all of the science. And I also have confidence in you, in your judgment. And I value that judgment. And I also think it's great that the leadership role you've played in the Suburban Council on this matter. So yes, thank you very much. And we're going to, is it all right if we go to approval for the recommendation? All right. I'd like a motion to approve the resolution for the North Colony Central School District to adopt the CDC guidance for music education. Mrs. Nardolillo?
I move to approve the resolution for North Colony Central School District to adopt the February 2021 guidance of the CDC for its music program as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you. I'll take a second. Ms. Grinnell, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? I think that everybody, I do also want to mention that Mr. Cannon could not be here, but we spoke about it, and is he here?
He's here.
Oh, there you go.
Here.
Did you just,
I got in late, but I saw Deb's presentation in advance and
Okay.
I caught a good part of it. So
Yeah.
I support it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There you go. And so the resolution passes. And again, thank you, Deb. I will take a motion to close out the curriculum meeting and adjourn. Mrs. Pangburn, I'll take a second. Mr. Johnson, all in favor? Okay. Thanks. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
You've
Good
been
night.
great job.
Very
Great
much.
job.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Deb.
everybody.
Good job, Mrs. Harrison.
Yes. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.